this was the day I decided I was going home to end my life. By drinking a lot, think a liter of Fireball a day. It had gotten to a point where I was texting people when I was blacked out drunk, and then I would delete the text before I woke up the next morning. I was going across this bridge, and I got about the first quarter of the way up, and I started to notice how beautiful it was outside. I just started to feel a presence that I had never felt before. It was a real Jesus take the wheel moment. And before I got off of the bridge, the only thing that I can constitute it to is like a new set of glasses had gotten put on me. An old set got taken off and a new set got put on, and I saw things, I felt things in a way that I cannot explain. I just started to realize everything was my own fault. It was a cause for a reaction that caused a lot of grief in other people's lives, and it devastated a family. It devastated an entire portion of my life, man, and it still has effects today that still affect me to today.
How old are your twins?
So they're 12 now.
Okay.
I haven't seen them in 8 years.
Wow. And look at what you're doing today.
Yes.
I mean, it is quite the 180.
100%.
Amazing.
Well, I tell you, at the end, what the true thing, and people ask what my purpose, my why, I always think that I am the why in my life of what God had me designed to go out here and do. And the main goal is to spread the message of hope to 1 billion individuals.
Buckle up. This is What the Hell Do I Know with JB.
Ray, good to have you here on the set.
Thank you, man.
So nice to hear Ray Hagler.
Hagler. Yes.
Right, you said everybody says Hagler, but it's Hagler.
Yeah, so it's Ray Hagler. It's actually John Raymond Hagler, but a lot of people think it's Hagler, and I say it's not Hagler unless I'm selling, and I'll haggle you on something. But other than that, it's Hagler.
That's right, and you've got the Beach to Bay.
Yes, Beach to Bay Appliance Services, local in the area. We also have a cleaning company, but primarily focused on Beach to Bay Appliance Services. And then I've also recently developed a proprietary system for appliance repair owners that can drastically increase their top line revenue.
Oh, wow.
Also, the margins that they make give them a lot of clarity, while at the same time simultaneously decreasing all that stress and the worry and fear and doubt that we go through, to give them a pathway so they can build a profitable business that runs without them, and give them that time freedom and financial freedom that a lot of us are looking for on the journey out here.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah. And do you find there are a number of appliance repair folks down here, I guess? Is that right? But there are, really everywhere. You need appliance, especially in a short-term rental community.
100%. It's a very fragmented market, but down here especially, there's quite a few in this area, but there's such an abundance of work. Every home has 7 to 8 appliances inside of it, and they're all destined to go out at some point. So when they do, we come in, diagnose it, fix it right, and give a very fair price, and we always offer an abundance of value to our customers.
I always find appliances that break. There used to be a time, though, that everybody was, you'd fix all your appliances, and then now we've gotten to this age where sometimes people just, if it breaks, they just get a new one.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for watching this show. It means the world to me that you watch. But I know, in talking to some of my friends, I was just at a wedding, and some of you even told me how you watch and listen to the show, but I know you're not subscribed. So I need that subscription. That subscription means the world to me. It's a great, easy, free way to support what we're doing here. So go ahead, hit that subscribe. And if you're compelled, I'd love for you to share what we're doing here. These stories and what we're putting out, I really appreciate the trust you give me in listening to us. So thanks so much. Hit that subscribe button now.
A lot of times, so the hard part is educating individuals on, are you trying to increase a timeline for yourself? Because it's just going to inevitably break again. I urge people at this point, you might as well buy a good set, stick with it, get a Whirlpool, a Samsung, one that we're going to be able to get parts for, and just get used to repairing that thing once every 3 to 5 years. And then once a year, allow someone to come out and take care of it, a preventative maintenance program. It'll extend the life of them. They're like our cars. You wouldn't just drive your car forever and not go get an oil change. Like a dryer needs to be cleaned out internally. A washer needs to be cleaned out at the filters. A refrigerator needs the condensers cleaned. There's a lot of preventative maintenance you can do for cheap that saves you a lot of money in the long run.
Oh, that's good advice. That's something that I think I miss all the time. The ice makers are the ones that get me the most. And I think it's like descaling.
Yeah.
It's like a thing.
Absolutely.
And it's a whole regiment.
It is.
of how to descale an ice maker.
It's a whole process, cleaning the coils on those. There's a lot. So as you find individuals whose sole purpose is to focus on appliances, they find a lot of ways to fix them, to keep increasing the longevity and lifespan of them. So it's always good to get a professional opinion, and that's what we're here for if anybody ever needs us out.
When did you get started in that?
So 2021, I founded the business and started, but I was at a very low point in my life. So it took a couple years to get going. And now at this point, or maybe it was 2020 when I started, somewhere in there, but April 18th will be 3 years that I fully went on the path of entrepreneurship and started my business full time.
Gotcha. So prior to 2020 or 2021, when you started doing this, what were you doing before that?
Before that, I was bouncing around a lot of jobs, doing things. I was at a point in my life for a long time. So I've been what I consider recovered for around 6 years now.
Okay.
But prior to that, I had a lot of issues with drinking and things that I just shouldn't have been doing. And it cost me a lot of jobs, a lot of great opportunities. And I bounced around a ton of places. One of the places that I settled on around 2020, 2021, somewhere in there, I was working at a golf course. I was waking up at 5 in the morning, going out, hungover, trying to make it through the day and then fixing appliances on the side, trying to grow my business. And then I ended up running into a home down here for Destined Dreamers, and I ran into a guy named Bruce, and I eventually... He had said, man, they're looking to hire over here at this property management company. I had a bunch of experience. I've been working in property management off and on for about 11 or 12 years. And I told him there's absolutely no way I'm ever going back to property management. I know that lifestyle. There's no way. 2 weeks later, I was working there. So, yeah, I bounced around a good bit and then finally landed at that place. And I would say that was a very transitional period in my life. Learning there, and then that's eventually after that's where I made the leap to start taking off after a tragic situation and go all in on Beach to Bay Appliance Services.
Right. You know, you mentioned I always like digging into the story, and in part that's why you're here, Ray, is I want to know the story.
Yes.
And so when you got into deciding that you mentioned that there was a time in your life that you were drinking too much. You got involved in things that you just didn't need to be involved in.
Right.
What was the turning point?
My turning point, it was crazy. So by drinking a lot, think a liter of Fireball a day. I drank nearly a liter of Fireball a day. Those 10 packs, I would drink those prior to go, like during work, getting through work. And then when I'd get off of work, I'd drink another 10 pack and then probably the smaller liters of those. I'd gotten to a point where just drinking beer wasn't doing it anymore. So I had to find something else. So I got into a trap of drinking Fireball and I got hooked on this stuff. And all of a sudden, it was crazy. I got into a point right there towards the end where I was drinking about a liter a day. I was blacking out in my car. It had gotten to a point where I was texting people when I was blacked out drunk. And then I would delete the text before I woke up the next morning. So I was always in a state of paranoia, freaking out. I never knew what I had said. I couldn't remember, but I just knew that it wasn't good. So the only way to get over that was to drink again. So I would drink again. It was a vicious cycle. And for many years, I stayed in that cycle. Well, I was working at that golf course, and one afternoon I went over to work on a refrigerator for the Destined Dreamers property. And ran into Bruce and got an offer to come start working there. And I took that offer because I was always looking for a way, okay, this is going to be the thing that changes me. I'll finally get through it. I could always go about 3 or 4 days, but I could never get through enough of enough time to just stop.
So Floors.com has all your flooring needs for remodel, new build. Call them up, check them out. It's FLOORZZ.com. Check them out. They will take care of you. Tell them JB sent you. They love to know how you heard about them, but they should be your first stop for flooring. Floors.com. True North Pest Control are my #1 pest control service I've ever had. They are in Central Florida, here in the Emerald Coast, and all over the state of Georgia. That's TrueNorthPest.com. Make sure you tell them I sent you. They are a family-owned business, and because of that, they care. I always love working with families, And the fact that they have the dad and the son and the daughter in there, they care so much about doing things right the first time. So tell them I sent you, TrueNorthPest.com.
So I got in there, and if you know Arlen, Arlen worked there, and at the very beginning, he began to pour in. I started to see him, Chris Harper, some of these guys working, and it was the first time I had ever seen a leadership team care this much about their employees. So I started to listen intently in meetings to Arlen. This was all very early on, and I had gone about 2 to 3 weeks without drinking. So I was like, yes, everything's good. Well, I slipped up and drank again, and it felt like a house of cards. Everything crumbled. So I was like, whatever. This was the day I decided I was going home to end my life.
Really?
Yes. So I left work that day. Nobody knew. I was able to keep a lot. Even drinking a liter of Fireball, there were certain individuals at other work, they knew that I had an issue, but I was able to hide it really well. I was a great functioning alcoholic, smoked a lot of cigarettes, so I'm sure it covered the smell of it a lot. And I, for some reason, could just function on it. But I got in, I started listening to them. I decided that day after I'd slipped up, I was going to go home to end my life. And that day was the turning point for me going across Mid-Bay Bridge. So if you want to know that, I'd love to share, man.
I want to hear it.
I was leaving work distraught. I had just gone, my wife knows, I just made a mistake. I was like, this is it. I'm never going to actually get over drinking. I might as well just go home before I do something else or hurt anybody else, because I was always very vicious and mean in my words. I wasn't necessarily a physically harmful person, but my words, I could just really be mean. So before I did anything else to screw anything up, I was like, I'll just go take care of this myself. Well, I was heading home. I had gotten to that little part right before Mid-Bay Bridge, and I started to go across the bridge, and I just started to look around. And I was always at this point yelling at God. I would go and black out in parking lots, I would drink, and I would just be in a constant fight with God. So all I would do was go blackout drunk, come and yell. So I was going across this bridge, and I got about the first quarter of the way up, and I started to notice how beautiful it was outside. So that was the first inkling of something pulling on me, and I was just yelling, crying. I was like, of course you'd make it beautiful today, telling God, of all days, of my day that I'm going to end my life, you'd make it pretty outside. So as I started to go up this bridge, I just took note of the waves, of the clouds, just the blue sky. I'd never seen something so beautiful. Well, I had a tugging on my heart just to stop and think for a second. So as I was going about halfway up the bridge, mind you, this isn't a long bridge at all.
Right.
I just started to feel a presence that I had never felt before. Now, I grew up in church. I did a lot of things. I'd always considered myself saved, but I'd never fully committed to a point where I knew that I had to put my life on the line. I had to fully commit to something. So as I was going up the bridge, I was just yelling at God, and I was like, you know what? Fine, I'll do it. It was a real Jesus take the wheel moment. I took my hands off the wheel, and I was like, I need you to show me truth. But I knew I had to commit in this moment. So I said, you know what I'll do is I'll make you the Lord of my life. I'll accept you into my heart. I need to see something because you know what I'm going home to do. After I said that prayer and before I got off of the bridge, the only thing that I can constitute it to is a new set of glasses had gotten put on me. An old set got taken off and a new set got put on, and I saw things, I felt things in a way that I cannot explain. It was supernatural, and I had a presence of God next to me, and I committed my life to Jesus. After that point, I never drank again from that day forward, and I went home and spent about 3 days in my living room, absolutely sick. I don't recommend that anybody does this. Most people are like, you're going to die because you just are quitting drinking.
Cold turkey, yeah.
And I was like, well, good. I'll either die or I'm going to get over this because this is my testing point. This is just all that was going on in my head. So I sat for 3 days in my living room, sick, throwing up. It was horrible. About the fourth day, I came out of it, and I finally, for the first time, felt good. I felt clear-headed. I was like, man, I'm going to make it this time. And then I just began to pour in. I began to listen more at work. I got involved in church. I just started making different decisions and changed the actions that I was doing, and I just never stopped from that day, pushing to make myself better. And here I am around 6 years later with a business. I've spoken in rooms all over the world. I have been mentored by some incredible men And then I just build for the kingdom, and everything I do is to give glory to God, because I feel like without him, I would not be here today.
Yeah, no, for sure. That is quite an experience. Did you ever do any of the like addiction recovery sort of thing? Did you go through any 12 steps or anything like that?
I would go to those meetings drunk most of the time.
Yeah.
So I would get into a real emotional state.
That
I'd be like, I've got to go, and I'd sit in the back rooms, but it was never for me. I really couldn't stand the mindset of being in recovery. So for the first year, I felt like I was in recovery. I talked with individuals. I went to some more meetings, but I'd felt that if I was truly going to give this to God and he's able to work miracles and do this in me, then I just wanted to go all in with reading the Bible, figuring this thing out for myself, getting in church. And I just about a year in, I changed the mindset from I'm in recovery to I've just recovered. I just started telling myself a different story, and I changed the narrative, the negative narrative in my head, and I said, I'm recovered. I mean, like, I've gone a year, I haven't drank, I've never gone this long. I could keep living in this state of mind if I need to be in recovery, go into these, not knocking anything that anybody goes through or does, just my path was different. And a year in, I just started simply saying, I'm recovered, and I stayed in that mindset to this day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a couple different 12-step groups out there. You know, obviously AA and there's NA and SA and all of those different things for different addictions, and they do tend to teach a process that you're constantly recovering. However, there's also like a Celebrate Recovery that changes the statement a little bit more with what you're talking about.
For sure.
There are, all of them follow a 12-step program. In fact, they follow pretty much the same 12-step program.
Right.
Which is biblically based.
100%. And I believe a lot of those are good. There may be certain people for years prior to that day of me doing that, there was about a year build-up where I kept telling my wife, I was like, I know I'm about to be done drinking. I know that I'm about to hit this transformational period in my life. So I'd been building up for about the prior year. I would go through those 3 or 4 day spurts of not drinking. Things would get better. I'd learn a little bit. Maybe I'd go to one of the meetings and pick something up. So I was always building up to it. I guess it was just easy once I made the decision, once I started to realize that the scriptures were open to me. I just started to really lean into personal development and what was it that I was missing. And I got my 3-year coin from the Celebrate Recovery. Yeah. I haven't gone back since. I've had another guy that invited me to go to his ceremony. But I think they're amazing programs for individuals that need that guidance up front. But there are some of us out there that it just doesn't work that way for some reason. So I have commitment issues to a lot of things. There's just a lot of stuff I have. So I was like, what's a natural way? And I leaned into that, and it worked for me.
Yeah, no, I mean, you know, one thing I tell people all the time is the gospel changes you, but change isn't linear.
Right.
You know, I just came back from a wedding. I was telling you earlier, we went on spring break, and so I rolled into town last night. Exhausted, went to bed, and came in here and start the week, and I'm so glad I get to sit down with you. But I was my oldest friend ever, who's been on our show before, and Joe, my buddy Joe, his daughter asked me to marry them.
Wow!
And it was great. I've known him since 4th grade. I've known her whole life, and it was great too that this wedding had a number of my old college friends that came in because we went to college together, and so it was really just a flood of memories that came in. But the couple asked me in their ceremony if I would share the gospel, which I always think is great. Anytime I get a chance, you get a room of people together and you get a chance to share the gospel.
Yes.
I love to share the good news of Jesus.
Absolutely.
And one thing, though, that I think is tough for Christians to even understand, especially if you've been in a long time, the change is not linear. It doesn't look the same for everyone, everybody.
Right.
Sometimes you take 1 step forward and 2 steps back. Sometimes you zig when others zag.
Yes.
And so we've got to be able to have grace for everybody's journey.
Yes.
And, you know, we used to have a saying in a church I went to was, it's okay to not be okay. It's just not okay to stay that way.
That's so true. I think, too, that a lot of it is personal forgiveness, you know, and the judgment against yourself and how you forgive yourself. I went through a lot of things. I'd done a lot of hurt in the world to people. So I'd always felt that, like, karma was coming back. There was just such a vicious cycle, even after drinking, and finally becoming a follower of Christ and then realizing just how bad I was. It's a weird experience, but I just kept going through. And what I finally found is you have to forgive yourself for a lot of the things that you did, because you just can't go backwards. You'll spend a lot of your time in the past on things that you cannot change, or you'll be either too future focused on things that won't actually happen instead of staying present in the now, because true forgiveness of yourself and no judgment allows you to live right now. Like, if not, you will always be worried, God, if I do, I did this to that person years ago, or, oh my gosh, if I go say this thing, they're going to think that. I just let the Spirit lead at this point. I am by far not perfect. My journey has been wild ever since even starting a relationship with Christ and understanding all of the gospel, everything that works in the power of the Holy Spirit, and how we can go out here and talk with individuals and help them. But it's just a journey, like you said. It's a very wild journey.
It's a journey. That's exactly right. And it's interesting you bring up karma. I've said this before, and I've had this debate with other believers. And I certainly think it's good to put good out in the world.
Right.
I think sometimes that comes back.
Yeah.
I think that, Truett Cathy used to say all the time, and he'd quote Proverbs, this better to have a good name than all the riches in the world. And so I think your name means a lot. I think integrity means a lot. I think all those things are a lot, but it's really about you keeping your side of the street clean, right?
For sure.
And understanding that. But karma's not really taught in the Bible. In fact, we don't get what we deserve as believers.
Right.
We opt out of, we get grace upon grace upon grace.
Yep.
And so, because sometimes, really good people have really bad things happen to them.
They do. And I feel like the nature of good, just how all of these things work in an essence. But, it's fascinating how it just all works. If you think in the mindset of karma, if you think, man, I've done this, I get repaid with this. I even just recently, I was going through another transformation in my life of just losing more of the ego, because it has been you get to a point where all of a sudden, like, let's say a year ago, I just had this voice in my head that said, man, maybe you should do that. Well, then all of a sudden you start giving so much attention to this thing, it inflates this new thought of an idea. And then all of a sudden you start to become and live inside of this narrative. Well, I started to realize even just recently, I was puffed up a bit. I was doing some things that probably just didn't look good out in public. And I really went through a loss. I don't know how to explain it, but I'm just getting more aware of my ego, more aware of how to control it, and doing things out here that reflect the grace that's been given to me, so I'm not always having to ask for it.
Yeah, that's so true. My audience, those that listen regularly, are going to know what I'm about to say, but I say all the time, ego's not your amigo.
Right. It's the enemy. It's
the
really
enemy.
Crazy.
Yeah.
You know that so I got this book. It was called Ego is the Enemy. Yeah. And I started reading through it. And until you have a mirror, we have the Bible, we have all of these things, but when the student's ready, the teacher shows up type deal, until you start to really realize it, and you're like,
so good.
Golly, I didn't realize that was ego. Because it'll blind you from it. It wants to keep you trapped and doing its thing versus you going out and doing the things that you're meant to do.
That's so good. It does keep you trapped. Well, self-realization is the only way to grow.
Right.
A lot of times people will think this person, if they could get that fixed. We think about others, in that way. We look at it. We like to rubberneck. We like the train crash. We like to blame it off on other people out there. But really, the only way to grow and the only way to fully experience, I think, even God's grace and just what God wants for you, is to look at the blind spots you have.
It's so true. Take the speck out. And that's what I've done.
That's right.
Over the past 3 years of starting my business, I say that entrepreneurship is not a career path, it's an erosion process. So I'm it's just eroding me down to this version of myself that I can't get away from. And it's a lot of awareness, a lot of self-realization. and again, giving yourself forgiveness. You don't know what you don't know. So as you begin to learn, apply it. You know, I feel in the age of AI, we've got this oversaturation of education. So we've got access to more information and technology and things out there, but it causes so much paralysis. So as your internal structure begins to change, the external reality doesn't shift quite as much because you're not taking actions, and all of a sudden that creates a lot of grief for you. You could fall back into sewer cycles and getting yourself really down because we're in our head so much and not out doing things in the world. So as I begin to think and plan and do, I try not to allow it to grow an egotistical side of me anymore about how much I can do for the world. I actually like now to just go out and apply things and see what the reaction is. How does it work? How can I tweak this thing and make it better? Because I feel that the more we stay in our head, the more educated we become, the more silent we become, and the more solo we become.
Yeah, very interesting. So I want to back up a little bit because you didn't just become an alcoholic. When did you start drinking?
I started drinking around the age of 15, 16 years old. Mm-hmm. So I lived in Eufaula, Alabama, country place. We hunted, fished, did everything.
Gone through Eufaula on my way to Atlanta.
I drank natural light. It was like drinking water.
Yeah.
But throughout all of my life, I was always the party, and I was always crazy. I actually say you can't spell party or crazy without Ray in it. So I was just always in the middle of everything, being the center of attention, being the life of it. When I moved down to Florida, I had actually graduated college a couple years early. I graduated at the top of my class in industrial maintenance. And then I left there, came down here, did nothing with my degree, and began to be just a handyman working. But that's when, around 20 years old, I was free. I was down here at the beach. I began to drink even more. And pretty much my whole life, up until 5 or 6 years ago, daily involved some type of drinking. Maybe a couple days out of the week I wouldn't, but primarily it would do that. But I was never like, I'll drink one. It was like, I'll drink one and then I'll drink 25 more, plus the liquor that's in there, plus everything else. I'm the last person that stays up. It was just that's how it was from the beginning.
Every night.
Every night. Every time I'd go somewhere.
Too.
Yes, 100%.
How do you save money? How do you invest in your future?
You don't.
I mean, you get real stagnant in your growth.
This led me for nearly 15 years on just a horrible journey. I lost everything. You know, I've got a family that I'd lost in the process of doing this as well. Children that I don't even get a chance to see right now and do. Things from 8 or 12 years ago that still affect me to this day from decisions that I made. These things are hard to come to grips in reality from. To forgive yourself for certain things, it takes such a different level of just life and awareness. But you understand, if I don't let go of some of these things that I did in the past, they're going to keep chaining me and holding me from my future self. So all I can do is make amends with what I've done, forgive myself, and then try to educate others on, just listen, don't make the same mistakes that I did. Here's some guidance of what I've learned, and I hope that this helps you on your journey and your path. But yeah, it took everything from me many times.
Can we touch on that?
Yeah.
Losing your family there?
100%.
How many years were you married?
So I was never married.
Okay.
I had twins with my ex, and through that time, you know, I was young, I was partying, we were doing a lot of other things too, right. But drinking was always at the forefront of it, and I allowed that to become more important than my family. It was more important than anything in my life, and the decisions I made caused the reaction of everything that happened. I eventually came to grips, because I used to try to find ways to put it on everybody else. And eventually, a few years in, I just started to realize everything was my own fault. It was all of my own decisions. Every action that I took was my fault from drinking. When I opened up the bottle instead of going out for a jog, when I did everything that I did, it was a cause for a reaction that caused a lot of grief in other people's lives. And it devastated a family. It devastated an entire portion of my life, man. And it still has effects today that still affect me to today.
How old are your twins?
So they're 12 now. 13.
Okay.
Haven't seen them in 8 years.
Wow. Have you? It's tough to make amends in that situation and the age they are and what you went through. What does that look like?
I've gotten to a point now in my life where I'm like, okay, I feel that, if the Lord allows them back in, if there's some way that we can make amends and do stuff, then 100%, absolutely. But it is still to this day taken a lot of time for me to even trust myself in certain situations, even though I know I'm 100% capable of things. I've got a family. There's all this stuff. That little voice in the back of your head is still there saying, man, but you did that years ago. So who are you to be the father that you think you're going to be. So at this point, I just allow the Spirit to lead, and I don't force anything anymore. I'm living in the reaction of my decisions. So I just try to learn every day from certain things. How can I make things better? If there were chances years ago to do things and I missed them, I no longer look back on that. I just say, today I've got today. What can I do to keep pressing forward to make myself and my situation better? So if the situation does come around where I'm able to, then I'll be able to make those decisions when they come,
Yeah. So is it, and I don't want to keep pressing, but I know there's somebody listening right now.
Right.
That is in a no contact situation.
Right.
With somebody. I think it's like a third of Americans. It's a high volume of Americans that have no contact. And it can be from the parent to the child, it can be from the child to the parent, it
100%.
can be aunt, whatever, it could be that crazy uncle somewhere.
Right.
It can be a lot of different things. Is right now that decision based really more on the other side?
Yeah, there's not a lot that I can do right now. Now, I probably could begin to do more, but again, I'm just in the decisions that I've made, being that I don't have. I'm at a point now where it's like, whatever happens will happen, and I'll be ready for that situation when it arises.
Yeah.
But it's true, because I don't think that we understand when we're in those moments the severity of long-term decisions. So you're making short-term decisions that have long-term consequences, and then when you snap out of it, the realization of what I had done, once I got clean, once I became recovered, that flooded in. That was horrible, because now you're aware of just what you did. And it's like, oh my God, there's no escaping.
Everywhere I go, therefore I am.
100%. Right. So you eventually have to start living in your own forgiveness. It can seem selfish at the beginning, because you're like, I don't deserve to be forgiven for the things that I've done. But at the end of the day, you have to realize that if God can forgive you, you can forgive yourself too. And if you've paid for everything that you've done, if you're just now living in the consequence of the past decisions, but everything's caught up to this point, it's like you just sort of have to deal with it emotionally and not let it affect your future anymore. And if it arises, you make plans and preparations, plan your work, and work your plan in that situation.
100%. And you're married, you remarried.
Yes.
When did you how long have you been remarried?
So
now?
Since 2021, me and Jennifer have been married, but when I went through that time period, she was a really good friend of mine. So we've been together for about 12 years. She helped me through a lot of that situation that I was going through, and just understood me as a person. Somehow, some way, Jennifer saw under everything and saw me as a person. And I told her at the beginning, I said, I pushed everyone away. I really don't have many friends left, because I drank. Everybody that I talked to, I'd pushed away out of my life. All my old friends, everything. Just a vicious cycle of mess. And she was the one that stuck around and truly helped me through everything. She is a ball of love. And now with our 2 children that we have, life has just become very incredible over the past 6 years. But I even put her through a lot of stuff too, because in the beginning portion of our relationship, I was still struggling with drinking, and I had quit a lot of anything else that I was doing, but I can never kick the habit of drinking. And luckily, she stuck around long enough for me to get to the point that I am today. She kept seeing in me, there's something about you that's worth sticking around, and she stuck around.
Sometimes God places good women in our lives.
It's only God. I mean, there is no way. Every time I look back, I'm like, man, you had your hand there, you had your hand here. I go back and I look at hindsight. I'm like, God has literally been everywhere in my life. It was my decision to either choose or not to listen to him. So, and make the decisions that I did. So
yeah. Now you did you have any siblings?
I do. I've got Candy, and then I have other siblings too. But where I grew up and just the relationship that I have with them is estranged. I lost a lot of my grandparents when I was young. I was the youngest child. So the other sisters and brothers that I don't have a relationship with, but Candy, who's my sister, she lives down here. I have a great relationship with her.
Yeah, no, I've met her at Level Up and a couple other conferences I've spoken at, and so she is really a sweet lady.
Yeah.
I know you said you went through something pretty tragic too that really spurred you on 3 years into your sobriety.
Yep. So the turning point to start my business came a bit different. I was driving at work. I was working for Destin Dreamers. This is about 2 years into me, no drinking, nothing. And I get a call from my dad on the phone, and he's like, he's gone. And I was like, who's gone? What are we talking about? Well, my brother-in-law, Josh, Candy's husband, had tragically passed away. That was a shock to our entire family, and just it was very bad. Just in everything that transpired from there, it was just a tragic loss. Candy is such a survivor and such a strong person, but it was a turning point because I had just lost my brother. Josh was my brother. If you knew our relationship, you would have thought Candy was my sister-in-law and me and Josh were brothers. So he was my best friend. I learned a ton from him, and for him to be gone, it put a hole in my heart.
Well, especially here you are on this trek 3 years into sobriety, so your hope is on the horizon.
100%. Hope's on the horizon. Everything's looking good. Work's looking good. Bam, tragic loss. So you have the decision to make. Do I either go back to down a path that I once went, or do I just keep being strong and move forward? Well, I'd made a decision to be strong, move forward. We did Josh's funeral. Everything went. 2 months to the day after Josh's passing, I'm in my living room. I'm reading the book of Genesis, and I had just sent my dad a video. And I was like, I got done with an in-depth study of Genesis. I learned this, and that. I was so proud of it. And I just explained to him everything that I had done, and I'll never know if he got that message, because 2 months to the day after Josh passed, my wife walks in the living room, and she said, he's gone. I'm like, who? My dad. My dad passes away 2 months to the day after Josh passed away. And I hit the floor, man. I just remember hitting the floor on my knees. I didn't cry. I didn't do anything. I just sat for about 5 hours with my arms, and I'm thinking, what in the world is going on? So now not only is my brother-in-law gone and my dad gone, but this doesn't leave any men really in my family left. I mean, we're coming to the end of a bloodline here.
Wow.
And it's me coming back. Now I'm looking at the responsibility of all this stuff coming. I'm working at Destin Dreamers. I'm doing all this stuff. And I just sat in silence, and I just tried to clear my head, and I kept just hearing it's time. It's just time. And what that meant for me is, instead of turning that pain into, to go backwards and start drinking again, I turned that pain into a passion, and I turned that passion into a purpose, and I said, I'm going to turn this purpose into something and build something. That was the day I committed to going off and starting my business, and I was like, I'm no longer going to do anything else but live and build for my family. So I made that decision that day, and it was, I think, April 18th, 3 years ago, is the day that I walked in, gave my 2 weeks notice, and that was the turning point for when I actually started my business. Is after losing my brother-in-law and my dad, instead of replacing that with something else, I said, you know what, I'm going to replace this with a new path and just start off on my journey of entrepreneurship and start my business. It's better for my mind, better for everything in my life to focus on that than anything negative. And that was truly the turning point in my life.
Boy, you could have really, if you hadn't had the 3 years to build some foundation against the alcoholism and the things, that daily cycle, that vicious cycle. It's like where you cover it, then you get shamed, then you get guilted, and then you go right back in. I mean, it's a brutal place to be, for sure. It
is. Well, for those 2 years, or 2 to 3 years prior, I read the Bible every day for 10 to 12 hours. I was always listening to it. I would get home and read it. It's all I did. So those 3 days that I was super sick, I was throwing up all kinds of stuff. I was bad. I was like, this is it. I'm really going to die because I'm being an idiot, not going to the hospital. I was like shaking. But I was reading the Bible, and I was like, I've never read this like this before. I was like, I've never read that way before. All of a sudden, the scriptures were open. I was like, wow.
You weren't reading numbers.
No, everything's began.
You weren't in Habakkuk.
Everything began to make sense. So I started to read, and I really leaned into that. So I got into church. I actually had my pastor, Pastor James, for a year. I got to disciple under him, or just listen under him. for a year. We met every week. So God started to place people in my life. So I had Arlen, who I was still is the most amazing mentor. I'll give all credit.
He's a friend of the show.
When I tell, there will be a book written at the end of my life, and it'll say everything I did, I basically just learned from Arlen. He's a great lighthouse, and he led me to start meeting. There's other mentors that have shown up and done, but man, that foundation, Christ is really it. Because even to this day, as I fall down, I don't fall on my face. I fall on the foundation of Jesus, and I get to this point where I start thinking, you don't really see a foundation of a house, but you know that it's there because the house is built sturdy. So I had to lean into all of that, and I felt that, oh my gosh, I'm being tested. I didn't really know what was going on, but I was like, man, I'm going to use everything that I've been building and learning the last 3 years, and instead of going backwards, I'm going to use this as part of my story to push myself forward and see what I can do in the future.
That's amazing. It really is amazing to have that. Were your parents together? Did they stay together?
They did, and I grew up in church.
Okay, so you did grow up in church.
Yeah, and in Eufaula, we went to church every Sunday. I went on Wednesdays.
Baptist,
yeah. Southern Baptist, and I believe too a lot of the things that I had learned in the past, I developed myself and my own beliefs that really limited me as I moved forward, and just the way that I thought about the world and everything. And I had a real distorted view of the gospel, of the Bible, especially as drinking begins to get involved. You start to realize maybe it doesn't work this way, and you start to create narratives in your head that
What do you mean it doesn't work this way?
I think the prodigal son story is really great. Maybe God doesn't have my best interest in mind. Maybe I can just do things better myself. And then around 16 is when I started going off and doing my own way.
What caused you to think that God didn't want to be heavily involved in your life and that didn't have your best interest? What do you think was and I do think some of it, I'm going to speak for my own self, I think some of that for me even was not so much that he didn't have the best interest in my life. I just think I thought I knew everything.
And maybe that's a good way to put it. At 16, I had already started working jobs. I'd started doing stuff. I was going out with friends. I had some leadway. Instead of really leaning in that time of my life more into staying involved in church and doing so, I slightly pivoted on a different path. It's that one, if you think of two guys in a desert and they just take one slight step, each just a little bit different over time, in a matter of 10 years, they end up at completely different places. So instead of leaning into all the things I had learned for many years, I just started to listen to friends. I started listening to my own desires, and I just began to walk a completely different path than I believe the one that God had intended for me. Or it was either for me to come back as a prodigal son story and realize that path wasn't what I needed, and now use all that years of heartache and pain to have my narrative and my story change now to help others. But for whatever reason, I just decided that Ray Hagler knew better than God, and I would just go out and do my own walk in life, and it didn't turn out the best for me. So
yeah, no, well, your life's not done yet,
right.
So that's the good news.
It is.
That's the good news there in that story, and I love that you did lean into Jesus later on. Certainly, though, I think even if there's young people out today, I think when it's Paul talks about it in Romans that he looks out and he says, you've got all these statues built, you got everything, you've got one for the unknown God.
Right.
It's written on our heart.
Right.
So I think there's a desire to know your Savior. It's a desire to know the Creator of the universe.
Right.
People they just a lot of times feel like, I think that one, it can be ego and I know everything, or two, I'm not good enough.
100%. And then that played on me all the way up until that day going across the bridge. That was the first day, I'd always noticed that things were created or things were happening, but it was the first time I'd really noticed creation was that day. And I was like, this was all created. What is it that I'm missing out here? And then that's when I started to really lean in. And to have that relationship fill such a massive void in your life that you don't know is missing. Most people, I believe, are looking for a relationship with Christ, but they don't know how to lean in, or they don't know how to just begin. And it's not going to be perfect at the beginning, but it starts with just starting. You just have to, at some point, make the commitment, start, and then just never look back, and that's it.
C.S. Lewis, I think he wrote that if there's 100 steps between you and God, you and Jesus,
yes,
that he'll take 99.
Yeah.
You just got to take
You just got to take the first step. And then not looking at the entirety of the race. I think that I had a very broad perspective of life, and I never enjoyed zooming in on the day-to-day actions that it would take. Another great analogy of that is like the Olympic runner who knows that they've got to run 5 miles a day, but they just focus on that next mailbox. So if you just can get to a point where you stop thinking of all the self-doubt, the worry, everything. And I had really just given my life to him going across that bridge. I was like, I'm either going home to end it now, or whatever happens, it's all in your hands. But I was like, all I ask is just show me truth, because I'd been seeking truth my entire life. Like, all I want to know is like, what is the truth? It comes to a point in the road where it's just an understanding that he is the truth. Like, there is no other way to keep going and searching and finding. It all reverts back or goes back to Christ. And it's been the only thing, he has been the only thing that I've found in my life that stays true the most. And when I go into those moments in that time of ego, and I go and I do things and I think I'm doing stuff right, when I'm sitting in silence outside and I understand his grace, that's the thing that you try to articulate to people, but it's only you that can experience that type of grace and be appreciative for it. And it's your own experience that proves how real he is.
I totally agree. You know, it's that grace is fascinating. It's sustained me in my life. My mother talks about she just wanted to share her faith with me and wanted it to be, mine.
Right.
But she wanted to share her faith with me because, and I love this. I think it's so beautiful, but she did it because she said, that's who's always pulled me through is my faith. And she said, I knew if you could know Jesus, he'd pull you through.
That's it.
And that grace, it really is. And it's hard to understand. I think as Christians, sometimes we've done a great job of saying this is what the Christian life looks like.
Right.
And there is no cookie cutter version.
There's not. And it's tough too, and even at the beginning of trying to live up to a standard of what a Christian is, there was a lot at the beginning, again, just trying to be a version of myself that I didn't know or what to do. It's just a daily walk. Eventually it starts to merge itself together. About a year or two in for me, everything that I began reading in the Bible, I understood it, but it was, again, that educational piece. So the thing with me, I find there's 3 ways that you can read books. You can read them for fun, which my wife reads books for fun. I'm like, how do you do that? You can just read it to study it, so you gain the information, or you can read it for fun, study it, and then go apply it out in your life. So as I began to read the Bible and read these different books and listen to my pastor and listen to Arlen and do these things, I just started doing different actions. The majority of it boils down to causality. It's all, if I take this action, there's a predetermined reaction that's more than likely going to happen for me. So if I continue to walk in love, I continue to walk in trust, I continue to walk in forgiveness, even though right now I don't, it's hard to believe it or see it in yourself. You're like, I don't know, man, I'm still feel weird and bad. We know that we're saved. We know that that everything's washed away and washed clean, but it's still this empty pit somewhere. Well, your daily walk begins to fill that void, and then your cup begins to get filled, and then it begins to overflow. So even, I don't know, about a year in, as I was going out and running appliance calls at the beginning, I prayed with hundreds of people inside of their homes. It's the stuff that we do in the background that nobody sees. So I don't even know how many hundreds of people I prayed with. I shared the gospel. One of my technicians got saved in my garage. There was a lot of good. Everything that I did for my business, I was like, I'm just going to do ministry purposes through this. I'm going to do everything that I can, not to force feed anybody my religion or not to do it, but to just be a walking example of what the juxtaposition of my life from where I was to where I am today. It is only proof that God exists. Yeah. That's it. He came in, he saved me, he gave me a new perspective, and I began to walk in that vision versus my own, and it's been amazing ever since.
I think it's important too to realize, and I've said this before, if you're a listener and you've a long-time listener for sure, you probably heard me say this, but biblical principles work whether you believe in Jesus or not.
They do, 100%.
Yeah. Like putting others before yourself.
Yes.
It'll turn out better for you.
100%.
Loving people really well, no matter what they look like or how that different they can be from you.
Yep.
It'll work out better for you.
It will.
Giving people forgiveness, that works out a lot better for you.
Yeah.
So biblical principles, it's part of why AA took out kind of the God component, is they knew that biblical principles would work.
Yes.
They just didn't want to turn people off if they were, came from a different religion or a different background or whatever, they were like, look, this stuff works.
It really does. It gives you new frameworks, new minds. I love the renewing of the mind daily. I would wake up, I would read, and then I would see, well, what can I apply out here? What part of love is it that I'm missing? What kind of patience have I missed today? Was I kind here? I would go back and reflect at the end of the night, too, with a win or a loss. I measure things completely different now than I used to. But, you know, success was, did I not react angrily today? You know, that was one of the first ones. And at the end of the night, I was like, man, did I really just not react angrily? That would be my next mailboxes. Let me get over anger. Let me replace that with love. Let me get over frustration. And then I started to realize there were levels of it. So anger is like way up here. Then I can have frustration. Then I can have annoyance. And then I can just be like looking at somebody. So now I have these different levels. And all of these, they just came from reading the Bible, understanding principles inside, and applying them in a way that it worked for my life. And all of them, it makes a lot more sense to follow those than to follow your own or what the world has to offer you.
You know, I find that fascinating that you were saying that frustration and anger. You know, my wife talks about this all the time, that how most people can't name but 4 or 5 emotions.
Right.
And so the fact that you started getting in tune with, you know, happiness, sadness, frustration, anger, anxiety, you know, joy, whatever it is, you start getting involved in these emotions. You once you can start defining them, you can start to maybe control them.
100%.
Right?
I agree. I think that, too, anxiety was a big thing for me. So the pit in my chest, I started to feel more like this is like the Tony Stark, like things starting to activate. So I replaced the word anxiety with activation. I was like, anytime that I'm feeling like I'm going through an anxious moment, maybe that's just activation leading me or pulling me towards a different outcome. So what if I lean into my anxiety instead of leaning back and freaking out on it? And I say, could this actually be activation? Could you be trying to show me something? Could this powerful feeling that the majority of the world feels like is a terrible thing, could I reverse my mind to be thinking it's a powerful, activating thing and lean more into it? So I started to change the way that I thought about things. If fear is false evidence appearing real, if doubt and worry and anxiety and all these things are bad, all good things come from heaven, then what is it that's controlling me? Is my mind thinking and making up narratives about my feelings that are so out of tune that I'm completely walking around aimlessly? Or could these feelings be telling me something? Could I tune in and change my mind and change my external reality, because now I'm thinking in alignment with actually how my feelings are, my mind is, and it creates new reactions that I can go out here and look at in the world. So instead of shrinking back in anxiety and staying down, I leaned into it and I'll just go out and talk to somebody in that moment. What am I feeling right now? You know, how are you doing today? Lean into those. You start to build new muscles. You start to renew your mind in a way that's like, all of those old things aren't from God. They're allowed, but they're not from Him. So how do I change the mind to now think of these things in a more positive way and use them as powers? How do I get myself personal power where I'm always thinking in problem mode? It's always problem after problem. I think that the mind always goes to problems. So how can I train my brain every time I get a problem to now think of 3 solutions instead? So now I've tipped the scale from it being more problem focused to solution focused, and I've got the power to make really good decisions. So I got 3 solutions and I pick my one best one and I say, I'm going to actually go with this. Whatever, with all the fear and anxiety, I'm going to do this, try it and see what it works. You're already valuable. The things that come out of your mouth are just the packaging, and you see what the world takes from that. So I just stayed inside of that. You know, I'm already valuable. I've already got a lot to offer to the world. You don't, what does it say? You don't put a candle under the table. So how do I put this thing up into basically where it turns into a lighthouse, where I get all of these different perspectives and I intensify my beam out to the world, where I can now spread light to a lot more individuals?
Yeah, hide it under a bushel. Oh no, I'm going to let it shine.
If you think about the light that you shine out here in the world, it's only for a short distance around you so other people can lean in and see. When you're in anxiety, when you're in fear, when you're in worry, you're inside of the body. You're not letting any light out. You're all in the darkness of your own emotions, your own pride, your own ego, your own fear, your own doubt, your own worries. And other people, when they come look, they can tell that thing's a little bit dim today. You know what I mean?
So this is just a tremendous amount of work to get to that perspective. From being in this darkness, having lost your family, coming back around and finding sobriety and finding Christ and finding this relationship and leaning into it. And not that you didn't have Christ. I'm a big believer in that once saved, always saved. I know there are other people that feel a different way. So I believe if you call on the name of the Lord and you were 7 years old or you were 15 years old, I'm a big believer that you're a Christian.
I'll speak on that for a second too, because at 6 years old, I did walk down the aisle and give my life to Christ, and I was a believer.
Sure.
I am a believer. There just comes such a long period of time where you walk away that you feel that you're so distanced. So whether it was me,
I agree with what you're saying.
If it was me that, if I had called him and I was not living in accordance with it, I don't know what it was. So if it's a born again believer, whatever happened 6 years ago was the committal stage where I became more aware.
You started following.
100%. I just started following. Maybe that's it.
You just started following.
I've had that conversation where people are like, well, you were saved. And I was like, I probably was. I don't know how to confirm it other than to say now that I follow and I live in accordance, I can confirm it for myself,
Well, I also think that salvation is so much more than fire insurance.
For sure.
And it is so much like, I believe that knowing Jesus, a relationship with Jesus, I say all the time, makes you better at all your relationships.
Yes.
But it's a joy that comes about here on earth.
Right.
As much as I want to see heaven, as much as I want to see those Jesus's face.
Right.
As much as I want to see my relatives that have gone on before me and those that are there before me, and to hold them and to speak with them again and to feel their love again. Not that I don't necessarily know it and feel it here now, but that presence. But I think knowing Jesus is can be so good here. To me, Jesus is the here and now.
100%.
He's the here and now, not just for later.
I agree 100%. And when you finally give your life to Christ, you start to follow and you say, I'm going to do these things in a different way than I've ever thought. You're not perfect at it by any means. You're just still trying to figure it out. You're on the walk and doing it. It turns out that your reactions are a whole lot different than they would have been without them. And the peace that you get inside. So I don't believe the pursuit of happiness is real. I believe the pursuit is happiness. Because once you get to the end is when you finally get to realize happiness. Happiness is a state of being. It's not a prize at the end of something. So you're either happy or you're not because you got to the end of something. If I can keep the end in mind where I'm going to heaven, like, I've already won the most amazing fight that I could ever fight in my life. When this is all over, I get to go to heaven, be with everybody, see Jesus, be in eternity where I know that I belong in heaven, which is all waiting for me. What is the difference in the next 40 years? While I'm here, why not do everything in my power to make this place better, to create a better environment for those that are around me, and to speak life instead of speaking death, and to be more of an abundance of joy and happiness, and actually be an example of what you can do versus being in my head all the time and being down and being, mainly full of darkness and not presenting light out here to the world and following in those footsteps.
We got so much pressure on us. We have so much pressure on us coming from all the different angles. Like you said, we're in an age of information, and there's so many people that can give you so many ideas. People like me all over the place, with podcast or, or chat, or you could be an influencer online, whatever it is. And everybody's telling you how you should live.
Right.
I hope people that are listening to the conversations that I have, and certainly even today's conversation, is neither one of us, in my opinion, are telling you how to live. We're just telling you who to follow.
100%.
We're telling you who to look at. If you wanted a really good example, it ain't me. It ain't
not
Ray
me either.
It ain't Ray.
No, it's the peace
me.
that you get inside. Yeah. It's the others that get to see you and how you get to help them. You'll never know the impact you may have on somebody by just simply being nice, by being kind. I just changed the way that I reacted to a lot of scenarios. I was like, how do I come from this at more of an angle of love, like WWJD? What would Jesus do in this situation? And eventually you stop asking those questions because you just start living in it and you start seeing your reactions. You'll pray for forgiveness. You'll do better moving forward. But you don't stay stagnant for many years inside of like one sin, I guess, or one frame of mind. He always is allowing you a new perspective, new people to come into your life, to go out there and grow as an individual and leave behind what I consider like a legacy. Leave something that's bigger than you. whenever you depart from this world, something for your family, and just be a guide out here.
Well, there's really nothing bigger than you than Jesus.
Right.
Right. I mean, there really is nothing bigger than any of us than, the creator of the universe, the savior of the world, the hope of humanity.
Right.
There is nothing, the Prince of Peace, the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords. I mean, just go on, Wonderful Counselor.
Right.
I think of all these names that Jesus carries, and there is nothing bigger. So that legacy really does boil down to one thing.
Right.
What I wanted to ask you next, though, is because you've done a tremendous amount of work, and it's evident that you've done a tremendous amount of work. And I know you focused in on mentors, you talked about, and then reading the Bible. But I joked earlier that you weren't reading Numbers or Habakkuk.
Right.
And I do want to clarify, there's still good that can come from reading Numbers in Habakkuk. It's just, the so-and-so begot so-and-so begot so-and-so gets... I mean, I'll be honest. I've read through the Bible a number of times. I skip a lot of the begots.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
and there's some studying that can be involved in there to understand the names and why they were important, put into the scriptures. But 66, some 67 versions of the Bible. There's some even more versions of the Bible out there, and other books. But in general, from cover to cover, Genesis to Revelation, where did you start? What did it look like? It had to be, for first timer listen, it had to be daunting to say, I'm going to open this Bible that's written over 4,000, 2,000 years or whatever it is.
Right.
Different languages to different people to different times and the context. Like, that is daunting to say, I can pick this book up and start. Where'd you start?
I started in the book of John when I really began to read. I think that I'd even probably asked Arlen or something, where do you even start in this thing and start going? And then I just began, as the scriptures became opened, there's another principle I learned later on. Be like a buffet, take what you want and leave the rest. So
That's so good.
I learned that a bit
good.
later on. But as I began to read, I would just pick up certain things that sort of reflected. I read it more of like a mirror. If I'm looking at this mirror and it's reflecting back on me, what is like making me quench, or what's making me think that, okay, I'm living in accordance, I'm doing something right here. So I started to read through that lens, and then I just began to go to more groups, more church groups. I began to talk to a lot older men who have been through a lot more in life, and I would just simply ask questions. So I got the King James. I have hundreds of Bibles at this point. I went and bought, at one point I was just buying Bibles just because it had a different, it was chronological. This one's in this thing.
Sure,
so I just started buying them to start to figure out what is all of this.
So you like the physical book? Because there's an app out there now.
There
too.
is an app.
And it has all the versions.
Blue Letter Bible app. I would get into reading that. I went really deep into the Bible and everything.
Great.
It's amazing to study. It was the most amazing study material for those 2 to 3 years that for 12 to 15 hours a day, either listening to it or studying. It created an amazing foundation. I can always revert back to scripture. I know where to go now and look at things. But I just started in the book of John just reading. And if I didn't understand something, I would jot a note down, but I would keep going through it. And I figured it was like building Legos or doing anything else. I may have to read this chapter 10 times before 3 sentences stick. But I was like, it's not about what I gain from it. It's more about doing the daily action of reading it and then seeing what sticks and how I can apply that in my life. So I just applied things that I had learned. Every time that I saw more about patience, I would read more in there, like what actually is patience according to the Bible? What is love according to God? And the most fascinating things were the stories and the parables. So I could start to understand from stories what Jesus speaks in parables and in stories to make viscerally clear what it is that he was talking about, the sower and the seeds, the prodigal son. All of these stories began to stick, and I could see a reflection of me in them. I think at the beginning, too, you can get trapped into thinking it's like written exactly for me. So it was very bizarre at the beginning. But then I started to come out of that, and I was like, no, these stories are just written to give you a perspective on how they lived in the past and how you can put your life up to them, what you can gain from them. It's a lot of advice and knowledge. And then you add little pieces that you gain to your life. Somewhere along the day, something will come out to show you, to give you a chance to show more patience, to give you a chance to show more love. And in that time, you really reflect, did I show enough love in that? Did I push as much as I could? I was very zealous at the beginning. I was on the bullhorn. You got to find Jesus. I was out there pushing really hard. Unbeknownst to me, I was like, there's a lot more tactical way to go speak one-on-one to an individual and show them from my perspective, what I see, and help them in their life. So it just was a continual erosion process. It was a lot at the beginning, and as I kept reading, new words became more clear. I would study these words, I would go to groups, and somehow, how it all works, you would get the clarity that you need for what you need for that day.
That's amazing. So you started in John. Do you have any favorite scriptures that stick out for you?
John 3:16 has always been one of my favorite scriptures. I really read it into Romans too, but it's the overall essence of the Bible, how everything sort of weaves itself together into your day-to-day life. So as far as me, a couple years ago, I could have gone out and recited scripture amazingly down to a ton of them, but I got into Romans and Acts, and those really started to clarify a lot. But just reading Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, I think the Gospel of John's very intriguing. It's a different view than the other Gospels.
Well, it is. Every chapter in John points to the deity of Christ. In other words, it points to that Jesus is God.
Right.
And
in the beginning was the Word, and the Word became... It all
points
sense.
to Jesus.
It does.
From Genesis to Revelations, points to Jesus.
It does. And I read through that lens. I believe that whenever I was going across that bridge, and like I said, the lenses that he had put onto me, everything started pointing towards Jesus. It was the truth that I had always searched for, now being revealed in real time. There were times, and at the beginning, I would read the Bible, it'd be like, in the beginning, and I'd fall asleep. It knocked me out. The first 2 months, I could barely read a few sentences without falling asleep, but it was the best sleep I'd ever had. I was getting full on just a couple sentences and just feeling nurtured. Oh my gosh. I still, even to this day, just remember that first time period of going through to realize there is another way in life. I don't have to be distraught and think that it's all on me. The pressure that you talked about, I had put so much pressure on myself, I was basically caving in, that my internal structure could not support my reality, so I was always feeling pressured and like I was caved in. When I began to build that internal structure and realize exactly what life is and who created life and how we can be saved and the hope that we have, all of this grace, my internal structure began to get filled up with something stronger than me. So now I could support my life. I could support all of the bad stuff that was coming, and I had a way to start dealing with it in response.
I think it's amazing. I started this year, which I've enjoy reading different books all the time in the Bible, and John is one of my favorite ones. Yep. I really, really love the book of John. I tell people when they ask me where to start, I say I would encourage you to start in John.
It even said in there too. He said that you shouldn't drink strong drink, or in the very beginning talking about John shouldn't drink. It just began. The book of John's amazing.
There are certain things that hit you.
It is the way it looks.
Certain things that work for you, and I think Scripture does that. It pierces the soul. It has a way to transform your mind, but it also speaks to the individual.
Yes.
One of the things I found fascinating this year as I started when I work out, and my wife and I got one of those like personal sauna deals that you can get into after workout, and it's got a Bluetooth speaker on it. And so after I get done working out, I turn on the sauna and I turn on my speaker, and I started in Matthew, and I just hit play. And so I just listened to it. And audibly listening. So it's interesting when you said you were either reading or listening. That audibly listening to the Bible also is intriguing to me. It's something I haven't regularly done. I've always just read it.
Oh, I listened through the entire Bible many times on repeat, just listening to it. There's another pastor, too. I don't know if you know who Skip Heitzig is, I believe is his name. But there were certain pastors that I just resonated with. They were able to speak in a way that I could digest it. But listening to the Bible is, I can read, I can do that, but I'm a very auditory learner as well. So I would listen daily. I would just go through. I would either have Proverbs on or John on, maybe chapter 1. I would let that thing replay many times. Maybe I'd get to chapter 2. But in the course of a month, you can really dive in and listen. So I would listen daily. I would pick up little nuggets and pieces, and I would just write down notes. But I would go back then and I would study deeply in the Bible. And then I would go to different versions of the Bible. I would use Blue Letter Bible app to get more clarity on exact words. There's certain commas in there that mean it's crazy how deep you can go. Sure. But I started to realize the more time I spent in the scriptures, the more it reflected through my life the next day. So, I just began to fill up on that. But listening to it, to me, is just as good as reading it. It depends on you as a person where you are.
For sure. I encourage you to just take it in, for sure. when I come away from Scripture, and I've said this before, if you come away from Scripture and anything less than the abundance of Christ's love, you've probably read it in the wrong context.
Right, for sure.
You probably read it in the wrong context.
For sure.
Because it is quite fascinating. So what's next for you?
Well, at this point, it's a continuous journey. It's like I said, it's an erosion process. So what I'm really focused on, because of the mentorship that I've gotten, because of the education that I've now received in business and just in life in general, the things that I've been able to do, I really am focused on helping a certain niche of individual in the appliance repair industry break free, from whatever they have, the vices that are in them. But it's the out of the truck program that I've built is a great pathway to start pulling in a certain individual that I'm looking for and really just pouring into them and seeing where God takes it. I was all over the place trying to figure out, well, what do I do? How do I do this? I built a successful appliance repair business, so why not go share that with other individuals, create that into something that I can just pour into people. I can use the gospel as we're talking. I can just really use it as a ministry, but ultimately help people break free from any vices and traps that they may have set in their life and just become a guiding light to those who are looking to level up.
Where can they find this Is it software? Is it a system?
It's a book that I wrote that's 10 chapters, and it goes through the exact framework of how to build a $500,000 business, how to run just a couple technicians and take home a certain amount of money, $10,000 to $15,000 a month for you while working under 25 hours a week. So one of the mentors that I had learned from, I got into the mindset of how can I run my business but run it in under 25 hours a week? That changed the trajectory of all the decisions I began to make. So I stopped building myself in the business and like a warden of my own prison. All of a sudden one day I looked around, it's like, it's just me in here. Like if I leave and I go out for vacation, I'm not making any money, I'm not doing this.
Sure.
So I had to learn a lot of leadership skills, how to not be a reactive leader, how to be more proactive, set systems in place, get really clear on a vision. How do I transfer this vision to other people? So I put all of the things I had learned, like I've spent probably $250,000 and 2,000 hours just developing at this point in my life, and I've consolidated that and synthesized it into 10 chapters, and then I go through each chapter. So the book's at about a 10th to 12th grade reading level. But in the school, its own school, I have broken it down to about a 5th to 8th grade digestible level where they can hear me, read the book, put it together,
Sounds like
and get
I could
that.
understand it then.
Oh, 100%. I even think we're at the day and age where the appliance industry is so fragmented. There are a lot of solopreneurs that are out there. Mm-hmm. If you're an electrician, if you're a plumber, if you're a pressure washing company, if you're anybody that ever thought about adding appliances into your business, this gives you everything for $37 a month.
Oh, wow.
I talk about how can I provide something fair and then give back in an abundance. This is the exact roadmap and blueprint. It's just up to you to apply it.
Wow. So they can buy the book. Where can they buy the book at?
So I've got a link that I can share with you where they can buy the book at.
You just tell it audibly so the listeners, if they're in their truck or whatever.
Well, it's on a landing page too, but it's called Out of the Truck. But if you go to school and you look for Out of the Truck, OUT, OV, the truck. You can find it there. So when you go in and you sign up for the course, in the introduction, the field guide is there. I used to sell the field guide for $37.
Okay.
But I've now just incorporated that into the school, and you get the training for $37.
All right, we'll post up some links, but
For
Ray
sure.
Hagler, Out of the Truck.
Yes.
I like that.
Absolutely.
Where does that name come from?
When I decided to start building my business in a way, I began talking with Arlen, other mentors. I started to realize there's a lot more life to live from outside of the truck than fixing dryers, fixing appliances myself. It's led me, since I've gone on this journey of getting out of the truck and documenting my story, I've spoken in rooms all over the world, in private rooms. I've spoken in rooms that have a collective of over $1 billion in there, people that are very high level, and been able to train on things that I've learned from sales, from leadership principles, from I really learn pretty well. I absorb, and then I'm able to articulate back out what that is. So higher level people always, for some reason, notice me, and they invite me to come speak to other individuals. And just the energy that I provide, I never could have formed all that from inside of the truck. So I've traveled to different countries. I've done all kinds of things. 7 out of 12 months last year, I didn't work on my business at all, and I traveled around. I personally developed, and I learned a lot about myself. And I want that experience for others if they seek that. There's some individuals that know that they're meant for more. They have a bigger calling on their life. I need to get a sustainable business that covers a certain portion of my lifestyle and living expenses. I need to do that under a certain amount of time. So now I create the bandwidth to go make real impact in the world. How do I create real generational wealth and fund major, massive impacts in the world that do good out here? I can't do that from inside of the truck. So I had to get out of the truck in order to start making those different moves. And that's what I teach individuals, because you never know where your life's going to lead you on your divine journey until you get out of the truck.
Was I guess beautiful. As an entrepreneur, you either work in your business or on your business, right?
You do.
And there's a difference. I think there's a difference between a business owner and a person that owns a business.
Yeah, you either work in your business or you work on your business. I mean, as leaders out here, there are literally only 3 things as a founder and a visionary of your business that you have to do. You have to get clear on a vision. Where are we heading in this ship? Then you have to be able to transfer that vision to your team through objectives and systems that they can handle. And then you have to build the asset. So you have to get to a point where your sole focus is, how do I build this asset? How do I build up other individuals into, they can now make the decisions they need, so I'm not the bottleneck of my company. I personally empower my team to make great decisions, and then they come back and they share with me what they did and share their wins, and then we meet. You don't have to be working in your business as much as you think you do. You just have to set it up correctly. That is what I've shared with individuals who look for it.
Yeah, no, it's a really a beautiful thing. We've always said that when we had our sanitation company, we set everything up on numbers, because numbers don't lie.
Right.
And so you could see in any number of reports that the tires were off.
Yep.
And then you dive into it and figure out why was that number off, tread wear or air pressure or whatever. And you'd see maybe phones were ringing too much. Is it a service issue? Yep. Is it pricing issue or whatever? So you could just really see what was going on in your business without having to I didn't have to stand in a room.
That's it. And I find that when you get the correct numbers, you get the correct system, you get the correct blueprint, you no longer have to make emotional decisions. It takes all emotion away, because it's like, dude, if I just hit these numbers, that's all I have to do? Yes. What stopped you from hitting that? A lot of people constitute it to failure. Failure doesn't even really exist in my world. It's just data that I collect. If I made a mistake or made something, I don't care anymore. It's only a reaction that gives me more data, so I can apply it to this iteration of a strategy and make it more successful. The righteous man falls 7 times but keeps getting up and persevering. It's the same in business. A lot of us have the mindset that, man, I tried this thing, it blew apart, and I'm just absolutely done. Emotional-based decision. Well, what was the data that came from that decision, and what's got you all distraught? What if you just did the opposite of that next time? What would happen? Can you keep going, or do you feel so down on yourself? Is the ego too much, where it's like holding you back from actually making another step? We're never failing. Failure is just a compass that points us towards the direction of our goals and fulfilling the vision that we know we have out here in the world.
That is a real, true mindset shift.
Yes. The thing that out of the truck is it's not what a lot of people think. I'm teaching a transformation. How do you go from technician to owner? There's a gap there. I bridge that gap for you. I actually show you how to bridge the gap by building you a bridge and a pathway to transfer from technician and transform into the owner of your business. So you're no longer making technician decisions, you're making owner decisions. Now you build other technicians who can help support your company, and you change those into powerful people who now go impact the community more for you. So, and they get paid in a very reasonable sum. They get to grow. You get ascension paths in your business. You get to really build a business that works for you instead of working against you. And you get to be the captain of your leadership boat, is how I think of it. We're all traversing the waves of opportunity out here, and a lot of us get bashed around. I find that most people have just never set a destination and say, you know what? I want to make $15,000 a month. I want to do that in 90 days, and I want to do it in this industry. Have you ever just set that destination and said, no matter what, I'm trekking towards that? Pray over it, do whatever you need to, but set a destination and get there. If not, you could be traveling for years out here just circling around doing what? So I think it's very important that we get in the mindset of reaching our goals instead of just never setting them.
That's beautiful. When you decided on mentorship as being the track that you needed, you had the turning point, you went through all that, you've obviously leaned into mentorship, it's given you something, here you are wanting to give back.
Right.
What was the how do you find, how did you find mentors? And I know you said it was at your work, but how do you get to begin to have trust that I can bare my soul to someone that's going to essentially hold me accountable?
At the beginning, when you don't have anything to give, all you really have is loyalty and listening ears. So I just would go in, man, and I would listen to what they were saying, and I was intrigued. Like Arlen at the beginning, I was like, what is he talking about? This is incredible. I've never even had a glimpse behind the veil of what business is. So my curiosity led me to a lot of these places. I grew up in the mindset, curiosity killed the cat. Don't be curious. I started leaning into curiosity because I was like, well, no, there's something here. So I had to break through limiting beliefs. So I looked at people that had the belief they had broken through what I was currently limited by. So I was like, well, they're doing it, and it seems like it's good. You know, what is good, what is bad, but the nature of good, the nature of virtue, all these things. It's like, this person looks, I'm not envious of them. I'm not wanting what their life is. I'm not coveting. I'm just like, man, they're doing something that's pretty successful. How can I learn from this individual, be like a buffet, take what I want and apply it to my life and apply it to my business? So as I started to go around, I quit being scared to speak up. I don't have anything. I'm speaking in rooms with people that have collectively managed over $1 trillion, and I'm in here talking with people. It's because the way that I listen and the way that I'll ask questions, I'm not scared to get the information. And then I go and apply it. I'm not just here to listen to what you have to say. I don't just want to be educated. Show me the next 3 steps. I'll go do them, and I'll come back to you and tell you what I did. And then you tell me if that was good enough. Eventually, it just started building trust. When I would go and talk with them, one of my mentors is a 9-figure annual earner, a billionaire, and I would just go in and I would speak, but I was always open to listen and receiving what he said. But I think they know as well that I resonate on a different level. There's a resonance that's out here that happens. There's other things with energy. For some reason, I just always had this spark or this thing, and they leaned in. A lot of them can't figure out my mind or my mindset, so I'm like, because I don't know what's going on half the time. So they'll always guide and instruct, but I believe that just listening and not being scared to do what it is that they say really will give you some credibility at the beginning, and they'll want to teach you. So mentorship with the right mathematics, the right mentorship, and the right mindset, you can compress years off of your life. Many years off of your life, and I was always looking for time compression. I was like, how do I do something that they're doing quicker?
It's the shortcut.
But
you have to be willing to do it. What I'm hearing you say is that you went in humbly.
Yes.
You asked questions. You weren't afraid to ask questions. You went out and applied it, and you came back.
Right.
I know a lot of people that sometimes will even come, that I've talked to over the time that they'll ask about mentorship. They don't want to do the work.
They don't want to do the work, and then it ends up reflecting on it. I don't know. Maybe a lot of them, they probably don't, they're just giving you guidance to go out there and do it.
Sure.
But at some point, if you keep becoming needy, I need you to, it's like, no, I don't need nothing. I don't want a handout.
Right.
I don't want $1. I don't want I want you to show me what to do so I can go and apply it. And thinking in shortcuts, in a sense, it is because I was always looking how to compress time, but I'm not scared of the work. If somebody's working 3 hours, I'm working 30.
By the way, shortcuts aren't bad.
They're not bad.
They're not necessarily bad. If you're willing to do the work, why not learn from others' mistakes? Right? The wise man learns from others' mistakes.
That's it. You don't need all of the how, but you need to know your why. Why am I out here doing what I'm doing? What keeps me going? What's my passion? What's my drive? Because when it comes down to doing the work, only your vision holds at the end. When you start getting knocked around and kicked in the teeth with all of the how entrepreneurship can do you, it's a weird ride. Yeah. It's good to have some individuals who have already been through it. Mm-hmm. And when you're looking at them, you're in the most despair, distraught thing, and you're trying to act all cool, and they're just sort of smiling at you. I'm like, there's something I'm missing. Chris Cumby was another one of mine. I learned you don't know what you don't know. And when I learned that phrase right there, everything didn't just become possible as all things are. Things began to become probable. So I started looking at life and business more as a math equation. I'm like Goodwill Hunting, writing on the board. I'm like, what is it that I'm missing from my own equation to get to where I want to be for success? And how do I measure success? What are the things out of my life that I want that I would feel if I reached these things, I would actually live inside of my success, which I currently do today. I live inside of my happiness today. I live presently in this moment. How are these guys already doing it? And if they're doing it, why can't I do it? What are they doing? So I'm telling you, go in, you listen, you learn. When the student's ready, the teacher appears. I am not closed-minded. I will tell you, I'll go all in on this thing. I'll believe it 100%. It don't work, I'm done. I'll pivot real quick. I'll swap real fast. I don't hold on to things like emotionally, oh, this thing didn't work. I'll cry about it. I'm like, whatever. I like that did that. I need to move this here. Try it again. So I'm always persevering and going because I believe that's just what life is, And if you learn that pain and discomfort are actually medicine to your soul and medicine for you, that the more pain and discomfort you go through, the more you grow. It's like working out. You don't go into the gym and lift 2-pound dumbbells and say, woo. You go in there to lift it to get the soreness so your muscles are growing. This is the same in business. Which muscles are weak for you and who's got a good workout routine that can help you with that? That's what I look for.
Very good. Very good. So this is, I have really enjoyed this, Ray. This has been a great conversation. I've really enjoyed getting to hear your testimony and all that you came from. It is an amazing transformation.
Yeah.
I mean, to think that there was a point in time where you were in a spiral and chaos and darkness, and then through Christ, you gained purpose and clarity and freedom. And look at what you're doing today.
Yes.
I mean, it is quite the 180.
100%.
Amazing.
Well, I tell you, at the end, what the true thing, and people ask what my purpose, my why, I always think that I am the why in my life of what God had me designed to go out here and do. And the main goal is to spread the message of hope to 1 billion individuals. I don't know by what stretch of the means I'm going to do it. Even today, getting on podcasts, if it's music, whatever the road leads to, I'm open for it. But I know that I can at least reach 1/8 of this world sharing a message of hope. Hope isn't a strategy, I get that, but it's a way that it can ignite something in others' lives, and that's what was given to me by Arlen. That was what was given to me at Destined Dreamers, was a glimmer of hope that I took. And because of good men that have gone through battles and gone through stuff, they saw something in me and they leaned in when I was at my lowest. They leaned in and they spoke words of life into me that stuck. So now all I do is I speak similar. I try to speak as best I can in that similar way. And I think of it like throwing spaghetti noodles at the wall. Like, Lord, please just let this thing stick however it's supposed to for him and flourish in your time. You're the one that provides the light. You're the one that provides the water. Just allow me to plant this seed. Allow me to just garden a little bit and dig in a little bit. Soften the soil is what I call it, the softening of the soil movement, because we're so impenetrable and hardened in our hearts. How can I come in and just soften you up a little bit and say, dude, this worked for me, man?
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. So I have one last question. If you could go back and tell your 20 to 25-year-old self, maybe a practice that you've applied today. We've talked about a lot of them. Maybe it's an attitude or a mindset. We've talked a lot of them. But if you go back and say one thing to that 20-year-old to 25-year-old Ray and tell him, do this. I wish you would do this now.
Right.
What would it be?
I would say lean into forgiveness quicker. Lean into what forgiveness has to offer you, because I think through forgiveness you'll find your way to Christ, regardless of what it is. Forgive yourself. Quit being so hard on yourself. Just forgive yourself and start looking at life in a way that I'm taking actions that cause reactions. Am I taking the right actions that are going to cause the proper reaction, or am I taking the wrong actions that are also going to cause another reaction, but they're not going to be the results that I want? The majority of that comes through forgiveness, understanding who you are, forgiving yourself, and daily making better actions. If you can just start that today, in a matter of 30 days, your whole life will look different. If you start today taking actions that are out of forgiveness, out of love, out of patience, out of kindness, the true fruits of the Spirit, and you start taking those kind of actions, the reaction will be different fruit in 30 days. Different things will come in your life that you never dreamt possible, but it all starts with today. And that starts with forgiveness.
Ray, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I think it's going to be a blessing to a number of folks. Maybe we'll get you to that billion.
Amen, man. That's what it's about.
Thanks a lot, brother.
You're more than welcome.